And that's
important.
another reason why I wanted to launch the channel is, and the same with you, social media and any of these platforms is easy for an artist because you don't have to make up what it is that you're going to talk about or display or whatever. You
Yes.
have your art. All you, and the same way, you know, when you were talking earlier about when you did the Facebook monetization, the idea that, look, and same thing when I did the introduction to my own personal art channel, was I have to do this anyway. And it's going to be a lonely process. I'm going to be sitting here grinding away doing something. I may as well turn a camera on and
Yeah.
turn it into content, you know?
Yes.
So that's one thing that's cool if you get to be an artist, is because you have instant content, because it's, let me just show you what I'm doing, because it's
I lean on that.
you know.
Yeah, I lean on that very heavily.
Yeah,
That
and I'm
just
sure
having
that
that
there are,
camera on, because you, like you said, you just got hours and hours of content, really. And I actually shy away from putting myself in front of the camera for because I'm shy because of it. Like I get a little weird about it, but it's easy to just on top of the artwork, and
yes,
then I don't have to even brush my hair that day. I'll work on and keep it moving, and that's
because
nice.
yes, yes, because they talk a lot about like doing a faceless YouTube channel. I think, again, it's, you have the advantage as an artist because I can show you all this other stuff. You don't have to know what I look
That's
like at all.
That's bad. Don't get up in front of the camera very often because I feel like my art can speak for itself. Although it
Yeah,
would probably help my engagement to put myself and actually speak. I've realized that I do. I see the marked difference between myself and other creators who are monetized. I don't know. Maybe I should put that on my goal list. But it's I still am able to create good content without putting myself in front and just
well,
making
I think really the, some people like to engage or become fans of artists because they can engage a little bit with them or get to know them in somewhat. They'll just like find out some information about them, and then they say, "Oh, I want to follow and I want to support this person." So I think you probably wouldn't have to do a lot if you didn't want to. You probably could just, in the beginning, say, "This is my inspiration. Here's my sketches. Here's where this idea is coming from," and then the person can watch it evolve. And I think that they would feel cool about that, of like, I saw this from the beginning, I saw this from the
yes,
idea, I saw this whole progression of what her inspiration was, because that's everybody always, what was your inspiration, what was your idea to create this, or what does it mean? And I think that's really what they're looking for the most as far as following you as an artist, is what's going on in your mind when you're coming up with that idea. And then maybe even you could talk about some challenges, like moving from octopi to stingrays. Do you have to work the wood a little differently? Or like you were talking about, you wanted to get that movement of water in
mm-hmm.
there, and you can
It's a
kind of
hard one.
point out that this is what I'm trying to accomplish, is get more movement in the water, type of thing. But other than that, I think you could probably just do a quick, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is my inspiration,
Yeah.
boom, I'm out.
Write it out. I take that a lot of that out. I do. I like to write because it gives me a chance to think about what I'm saying once, because often when I try to speak it out, it doesn't come out quite as intended. So I guess that's that little bit of a buffer for myself, for my own self-conscious even. Was
Yeah.
okay, if I'm typing it out, at least I can just read through it just to protect my ego a little bit.
And before we get too far afield, did you want to show your daughter's
Oh,
work? As we were talking about you
she did
being,
some stingrays herself. I inspired. She's
we were,
very good.
yeah, we were talking a little bit. You said you've been creating as a child, and we were talking a little bit earlier about how you just have to be really careful not to criticize an artist. And if that happens, usually they can make it through and keep their creativity and keep their motivation and stuff like that. Not to say you can't do helpful suggestions and things like that, but I've met too many artists that were just completely crushed.
Yeah.
Somebody criticized something they did when they were 5, and then they just stopped doing art altogether.
When I was
I'm not good at this, and they just put it away, and then they never touched it again.
and it's a shame too. Julia, when I was young, gosh, I got this book probably when I was about 12, between 12 and 14 years old as a Christmas gift. I got one of the books. The original book I actually gave away. I've given a couple of copies of this book away over the years, and it was very significant in my growth as an artist, a young artist, like teen artist. And that was Julia Cameron's Drawing on the Right Side of Your Brain. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And she says in that, and I was listening to one of her podcasts this week because thinking about our interview, it made me think of that book. And I listened to one of her podcasts, or a podcast that had her on it. And she really emphasizes on when we're children, as children, we're all artists.
Yeah.
But often once puberty hits and hormones kick in, that self-critic kicks in too. And so she really preaches to try to push through that, to say, okay, that's just my inner critic speaking. Push through that and keep learning, because art is also a learned thing. You can have a lot of talent, and I believe I have a good amount of talent, but I also have been a student of it all of my life, because I haven't gone to any formal school for art. So I've read a lot of books about it. But back to Julia Cameron and children and being your own artist critic, really. I have found myself to be my artist critic. I've run into a few critics over the years, and you're right. It hits hard, because I've been blessed to be surrounded by family and friends that have always supported my craft or my desire to be an artist, whether it's gifts for my birthday or just commissioning me to have some extra money to put towards my craft. It's just, I've had a really strong support network for my craft, for sure. So
and you're lucky that you had support in your family, because sometimes the advice is the last place that you need to look for. The biggest part of your support is your friends and your family, because usually your fans are outside of that circle.
Yeah. I've been fortunate with that.
Yeah, because that is the experience of a lot of artists, is that they just don't feel, their family doesn't really value it and stuff like this, so they think that there's no value in it. Yeah. And once they get out in the world, they see other people value what they do. So that has probably lent to a lot of my success as an artist, is that support network. I really do. God put all these people in my life to help me, and I have to be thankful for that. Like, really, all these people and a few
support network, I would be. I worked a 9-to-5 job for years, and even doing that, though, I was finding opportunities. I would be on the phone answering calls, and I'd be doing portraits for managers. So there's always that opportunity. I was always looking for that chance to squirrel away, chance to create, even when I was working 9-to-5 jobs or helping decorate the office with my employees.
Right.
So, but yeah, having people that support you is quintessential to being an artist, I think.
And you had support from a few really cool cypress trees that pushed their way into your life too.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's right. And
they're
all too.
Do you do everything in cypress? Or cedar, right?
Yes. Yeah. I thought it was, we did think it was cypress. Oh. We thought it was pecky cypress, okay. which is a tree that does grow down here. But so cypress has a bit of a sour smell, and cedar has a very aromatic smell. So that's that was the huge difference between the two species. What we learned about this is that the farther away from water it gets, the more holes it gets in it.
Oh, wow.
It's a water tree. That's right.
I'm surprised. I would have thought it would have been the other way around, that the water would have affected its growth and made the holes.
I think because it expands with the water. It expands.
Oh, okay.
So I believe that's the reason.
So without the water, it can't expand to like fill,
right?
Like
push the hole, dehydrates and gets holes in it.
Do you work with both? Do you work with stuff that grows close to water and is tight, and stuff that has holes?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Most of it, what we have currently, does have a lot of Pecky in it, but it does vary by tree. Some of them are like so full of it that I need to fill it with resin. Some of my pieces, if you've seen, are resin filled, and that's to help with the structure, because you don't use something with a bunch of holes in it. You got to fill that or carve around it.
Well, secure it somehow. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it varies. It does vary. I was not there for them to be cut down. So I guess I would have to ask my husband, but I have noticed with some of the smaller trunks, those are not Pecky. The older trunks tend to get more Pecky.
Oh, okay.
And that's part of the reason why he wanted them, our friend wanted them taken down, was because they were unstable. So they weren't safe. Either we were going to take them down, or they were going to fall down on their own and maybe fall on his house or what have you.
Right.
So, and with that, I got a huge pile. I told my husband, no more. I'm good. I don't. And every once in a while, I come across some different species of wood. I had the pastor at our church, one of the pastors gave me some Chinese elm, and that's curing still. Actually, I could probably carve into it now because I've had it for well over a year. But it is like an orange, kind of like the cedar, but more like a brighter orange than the cedar.
Oh, wow. Okay.
If you could imagine that, because cedar is pretty red and orange colored.
Yeah.
I have some oak. I don't really care to work too much in the oak because oak is very hard and very heavy. So it's hard to carve into. Cedar's a mid, what is my main, and that's a mid hardness.
I think cedar would be a little more buttery. Slide through.
It is. But with these pieces, because it's a natural, it's not milled, it's not farmed or milled, I can run into a lot of knots, a lot of brittleness. So I have to check all of the wood as I'm carving it and just get rid of any rot, because it's got to be removed so it doesn't continue to decompose. Not the epoxy, the resin helps a bit, quite a bit with that if it's that type of piece, and it's really fun to work with too. It gives it like that contrast. The blue and the red that I've done in the past is really pretty.
So do you think that you think that wood will remain a part of your artistic life, or do you think at some point you're just going to be like, I'm going to go back to sculpting, or I'm going to, don't know yet?
I've thought about that, because it's woodworking is it's a high impact medium, because the chisel and the mallet I've got. I'll show you some of these. These are cool. The answer, it's not a simple answer, because I got these big guys. These are fun. That's a lot of, it keeps me healthy and in shape, but I'm in my 40s now. So I figure over time, my joints are not always going to be what they are. It's going to be harder for me to continue that over 20 years. I would think maybe over 25, maybe.
Okay, so do you hear that, collectors? You need to collect her stuff in the next 20 years.
Oh, I'm not going to be done with my art though. So that's what I've thought about this.
But no, but what I'm saying is,
what am I going to do if my body fails me? Yeah. Like, what do I do if my body fails me? Because I'm always going to want to create this. I know it's never going to go away. So what do I do? What is the next thing if I choose? So I've always have my painting to go back on. That'll always be a part of me and near and dear. And I'm always available for that commission wise. I do say that if you want paintings done, let me know. I'm so versatile. But I think that the next step after carving would probably be clay, sculpting with clay, because it's not as, I'm familiar with working in 3D now. It seems like a right direction to go into sculpting from painting from 2D to 3D, and probably to stay in the 3D area.
And you must have a pretty good, talented 3D mind, because it is difficult to translate. Obviously, artists get frustrated, I think, because we live in a 3D world and then we try to duplicate that into a 2D world. And so we're always frustrated of trying to make it look realistic if you're a realistic painter. But to be able to do what you've done, which is look at a piece of wood and see that sculpture inside that wood in 3D, I think that's a big part of the talent, is that your mind can visualize the 3D item that's in there and all the surfaces of that and how you're going to bring that out of the wood and things like that.
Which is interesting, because I think it's easier to work in 3D than in 2D. Because in 2D, you have to I feel like I need to understand the perspective and the depth, like with the shadows and how to bring all of that out on a 2D surface, versus sorry, there's a truck going by. I can mentally visualize in 3D, as well as when I study. I can, especially like with animals, you can go into, there's so many study books in biology books on what these animals look like inside and out. So, and that's fun to learn. But I don't know, I think to me, it seems like it's easier because I can get visual references and I can visualize it in 3D as well, versus trying to translate it on that 2D surface. I don't know. To me, it seems it's easier to me.
And it may be, and I just think that most artists' experience is that they don't necessarily get a chance to work in 3D, because unless it's sculpting, because not that many people have an opportunity. I mean, they really have to go out of their way to start working in wood, want to take on that task, and even sculpting, to have a space to do it, because a painting you can just lay on the dining room table, but if you have a sculpture, you're gonna kind of
having the space is important.